Hello everyone, this is Kona, and thank you for tuning in for another TF2 commentary. I am continuing my quest to master the arcing weapons of TF2, and I am starting off with my favorite weapon, the Huntsman, and right there, that taunt kill. That's one of the reasons why I love this weapon so much. Now, the reason why I like this weapon a lot is it reminds me of bolt-action rifles back in the day when I used to play Medal of Honor Allied Assault. In that game, and in a lot of games like modern games that you see today, there are a lot of automatic weapons, and when you kill someone with an automatic weapon, it's okay, you know, you get the job done, but it was kind of easy, right? It was, you didn't have to work that hard for that kill. It was just like you just mowed someone down with, you know, your automatic weapon, really easy. But with the Huntsman and with bolt-action rifles like in games I used to play, it actually took some skill to use these weapons. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, well, this is not the Huntsman, this is the Luxman. This is the weapon that you continue just to spam all over the map, and hopefully you'll get a headshot, hopefully you'll get a hit. It does a decent amount of damage. But hey, this weapon is actually very difficult to use consistently. When you play with the Huntsman, you have to really change your playstyle from the traditional stand back and shoot from halfway across the map. You know, when you play a sniper. You can't play like that when you play with a Huntsman. You have to be right in there on the front line with the rest of your teammates. That's probably the best range to play as a Huntsman. This weapon is a lot easier to use when you draw the bow back fully before you fire. If you draw it back fully, you actually do more damage, and the arrow takes a shallower trajectory, so it actually goes a little more straighter. There's less drop off. If you just kind of click and fire, you're gonna let go of the arrow. It's not gonna do as much damage, and you're gonna have to really compensate for the bigger arc. The hardest part about using this weapon is probably going to be trying to hit moving targets, and let's face it, everyone is pretty much moving a lot in this game. Unless you're up against like another sniper or something like that who's super far away, you might be able to get a really long headshot on them, but most of the time you're going to be on the front line dealing with enemies who are constantly moving around. And so I got a cool tip, and I actually agree with this tip because I used to do some archery, not a lot, but I was told this as well in real life. You kind of have to visualize the arrow shot before you actually take it. If you visualize the arrow flying through the air before you actually take the shot, you can kind of compensate for how far you are away from the enemy and also the enemy's movements if they're trying to move from side to side. It's really difficult to hit someone who is moving back and forth side to side, because in that case it's like, well, where do I shoot? I tend to just shoot kind of in the middle, and I hope that they run into it. Sometimes it actually works. But if you're shooting against someone who is just running in one direction, it's a little easier because you can actually lead your target a little bit, and it is just so satisfying when you get that arrow to meet with them perfectly when they're running. There are two basic techniques that I use when I play with the Huntsman. The first is when going for very long range targets, particularly snipers. If you see an enemy sniper who has a sniper rifle, he's usually staying still, and he's usually far away, tucked in a corner somewhere on the map. And probably, hopefully, he won't see you. And so that's probably your best opportunity to go for him, is when he's sniping someone else and he's very still. By the way, here, check out this shot. I kind of panic shot here. Oh, headshot. That was just really lucky, because I wasn't actually going for that. I was just kind of hoping it would hit. But yeah, when I go up against snipers, I usually just put a crosshair right above their head, let go, and it usually gets a headshot. Because usually they're standing still and they're scoped in. And if they're scoped in, they can't move around too much. By the way, here, me and Dubs were just testing this out. I don't think he had anyone to really crit, so I was like, just give it to me. And this actually worked pretty well. So much damage with this arrow. Unfortunately, I didn't get that heavy. I probably shouldn't have gone for that heavy, because this thing can actually kill pretty much any other class in one shot. Over 200 damage per arrow when it's crits. Luckily, I get the headshot right there. The other technique that I use as a Huntsman is the flicking technique. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I call it the flicking technique, and it's really useful for close to mid-range targets, because you are a Huntsman sniper, you're probably going to be on the front line, so this technique is really good for compensating for movement of those close and mid-range targets. By the way, this is another thing that I like to do. Taunt killing spies are so much fun, because all you have to do is really face them, and they can't really do anything. Sometimes you can actually make sure that your back is against the wall and taunt kill, and they'll try to face stab you, and when they're trying to face stab you, they'll accidentally run into the tip of your arrow and you'll get the kill. Here I'm just trying to taunt kill this scout. I'm hoping that he would be like kind enough to just run into my arrow, but it doesn't work out. But yeah, the flicking technique is when you quickly move your crosshairs across the target. You're not necessarily keeping track on the target. You move your crosshairs across the target, and right at the right moment, in order to compensate for their movement, you let go of the arrow. And hopefully, if you get the timing right, you'll get the kill. Now, this is something that takes a ton of practice to do. And it's not only because you have to compensate for the distance between you and the target, because it takes some time for the arrow to fly, but you have to practice anticipating your enemy's movements. You have to anticipate where they're going to be, because it does take a while for that arrow to fly. And I'm really learning this about all these projectile weapons. It's all about anticipation. Can you guess where they're going to be, fractions of a second later? And you can get some visual cues on what the enemy is going to do based on what's happening right now. Like this, I can see that spy stabbed him, and I knew that spy was going to just stab him and run forward, so I can kind of lead him, and luckily I got the hit. Unfortunately, I didn't get the kill. So that is my experience with the Huntsman in my quest to master the arcing weapons of TF2. Very tricky to do. Now, if you guys have any cool tricks you use when using the Huntsman, let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious as to how you actually use this weapon. Finally, I'll leave you with one of the coolest taunt kills that I've ever done in TF2, and luckily it's with my favorite weapon. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a nice day.
I was wondering why Sniper would just be standing in the corner like that.
Stay.
Good game.